Chapter 68, Yonghe Suppressed and the Pacification of Tibet, Union of Politics and Religion. In 1780, the 45th year of the Qianlong Emperor, the Qing government resumed Zhangyang Gacho as the 6th Dalai Lama and the Losang Khalsang Gacho, the 7th. As the 7th Dalai, Losang Khalsang Gacho had been leading a tough and a bumpy life. Identified at his 12 as the incarnation child, he had been experiencing 3 dynasties of the Kangxi, Yonghe, and Qianlong Emperor, and died at 50. He had had substantial power for less than 6 years, all of which fell in his late years, which were also during the Qianlong dynasty. And during the 6 years, a series of coups like the assassination of the great Kholin, Guru Namya, rebellion, so on and so forth took place in Tibet. Hence it is said that his whole life was full of tribulation. Despite of such riots, during the last 6 years, the 7th Dalai Lama coordinated the Grand Minister resident of Tibet and all the Kholins, succeeded in constituting the Gashak regime, which was the last unified regime system of politics and religion in the history of Tibet. Term Union of Politics and Religion has been frequently talked and applied. What on earth is it? Let's surf its meaning and historical development in detail. Tibet was called Tangut, Tanggute, also Tubot, Tubote, in ancient times. After the Sui and Tang dynasties, it was then called Tubo in Han Chinese books. The regime system of the unity of politics and religion arose in particular historical background and geographical environment. The earliest one appeared in 1270, the Yuan dynasty. Kublai Khan, founder emperor of the Yuan dynasty, conferred Pakpa of Shakya sect, Maharatna Dharma Raja, great treasure Dharma Lord, to rule the whole 130,000 households of Tibet in both politics and religion. This was the beginning of the unity of politics and religion of Tibet, also the first rise of Shakya sect. Overwhelming power was weighed to the Sakya sect on the unity of politics and religion. Just imagine, it possessed the power to rule the 113,000 households of Tibet. It was essentially a vassal state. The Sakya sect had ruled Tibet for as long as 100 years, which laid the cultural and social foundation for the regime system of the unity of politics and religion in the land of Tibet. During the 100 years, ordinary people had been accustomed to what Tibet had been. We have to admit that the unity of politics and religion of the Yuan dynasty was the one with the most power granted among the 3 dynasties. Dating the main dynasty, Gaju sect, which is equivalent to the Chan of Tibet Buddhism, was propped up. In the 14th century, Pakchu Gaju, one branch of Gaju sect managed by the clan Long, got the support of the Ming government and constituted the second regime system of the unity of politics and religion of Tibet. This regime was called Paktru Desi, who took over the scepter from Sakya sect. During the whole age of the Ming dynasty, essentially, Gaju sect had been holding sway in Tibet. During the swell of fighting for the power to rule the world, namely the time of the alternation of the Ming and Qing dynasties, Gelug sect placed a bet on Manchurian regime. Well, it was not quite struggling to bet on the Manchurian regime, since the regime was still weak at that time. Namely, Gelug sect stood in the camp of late Jing, 1616 to 1636, the predecessor of the Qing dynasty, which was initially a newly built regime. It was indeed a bold decision. However, Gelug sect won the bet on the late Jing regime. Thus, since its beginning, the Qing dynasty had been fully supporting the Yellow sect, also called the Gelug sect. Dating the time of the 5th Dalai, Gelug sect had gained the political and the religious regime of the entire Tibet. The third regime system of the unity of politics and the region of Tibet was constituted in Jabang Monastery called Gandan Pozang. Continuing the regime system of the unity of politics and the religion of the Gaji of the Ming Dynasty, Gelug's regime system of Gandan Pozang was essentially not something new but just to continue the institution of Delhi. The fifth Dalai Lama was conferred by the Shunzhi Emperor in early Qing Dynasty. He himself thus paid the particular visit to Beijing, which set a precedent that he was the very first Taoku who came to Beijing. He lived in the Xihuang Temple and was conferred the title with such many words: Dalai Lama of Mahashwara of Sakravati, the great sovereign ruler of the land of bliss in the West, chief of Buddhist teaching in the world, Vajradhara, 西天大善自在佛所领天下释教，普通瓦赤拉达达赖喇嘛 and a four-language golden seal was bestowed to him. The four-language golden seal comprised a golded seal in four languages of Manchu, Mongolian, Han Chinese, and Tibetan, and a golden booklet. Well, this conferral of the four-language golden seal symbolized the endorsement and authorization on the Gandan Pozang institution of Gelug in Tibet. In jurisprudence, in the foregoing chapters, we've introduced the geographical layout of three Mongolias. In early Qing Dynasty, the western territory of China was controlled by the Zhunger tribe of the Ulat Mongolia, which covers present today's Xinjiang, Uyghur Autonomous Region, Qinghai, Gansu, and some countries whose names end with Stan. The territory size, as a matter of fact, was not smaller than the one of the Qing Dynasty. Horshat tribe, one of the Ulat Mongols, controlled Tibet. Monan and Morbei Mongolia controlled vast areas which comprised the Inner Mongolia and Outer Mongolia, as far as today's Hingan and the Hulunbuir League. Hence, in the early 100 years of the Qing Dynasty, the intractable issue was the affair of frontier security, which was essentially the affair related to the Mongolia. At that time, as a gifted leader, Gurdan, full name Gurdan Poshagutu, ruled loosed as Khan of Zhunger tribe and invaded in full force repeatedly. The Kangxi Emperor had ever taken expedition to battle against Zhunger 3 times, but with little reap. During that period, the Qing government had no spare energy to care for Tibet since it had been busy battling the Zhunger tribe of Ulat Mongolia. Tibet was at that time controlled by the Horshat tribe of Ulat Mongolia. It was already quite challenging for the Qing dynasty to deal with the Zhunger tribe, not to mention the Horshat tribe. Thus, the national defense strategy at that time was 平准安葬. Well, 平准means to suppress the Zhunger, which clearly indicated that Zhunger needed to be eradicated as the priority, and Anzang means to appease Tibet, which implied that the necessary measures should be taken to pacify and appease Tibet. In the late times of battles upon the policy of Pingjun Anzang, which was 1720, Yonghe, the 14th prince, also the general, defeated the allied force of Zhunger and the Horshat tribes and consequently recaptured Tibet. He chased the remaining troops of Zhunger and the Horshat tribes to the place as far as Yili. He then succeeded in escorting the Lasong Kaosang Gacho, the incarnation child as the 7th Dalai, to Lhasa to proceed the enthronement which we've introduced in previous chapter. The Qing dynasty thus abolished the Gandan Pozang institution, which had been effective since the 5th Dalai. The Gandan Pozang institution was originally inherited from the Delhi institution of the Ming dynasty. Learning from what had happened, Gandan Pozang institution was abrogated and the Kolan institution made its debut as the replacement, starting from the 7th Dalai. Just to recap the politics regime of the unity of politics and religion. 1. The first one was from Bahba. 2. The second Deshi institution of the Ming Dynasty. The third, Gandan Pozong institution of early Qing Dynasty. 4. And the fourth one, which was the Kolan institution set up since the 7th Dalai. Kolan institution dismantled the position of Deshi, who monopolized the power. In Deshi institution, Deshi owned the power of one man say, namely he himself made all the calls and he might do whatever he wanted. Thus the role of Deshi was cancelled and replaced by a council institution. This council institution set up the Kolan Conference as the administrative center, by which all the matters or decisions need to be discussed. This meant the circumstance for one single person to make any final calls was terminated. Instead, voting was mandatory for every matter. Kolan Conference became the administrative center for any strategies or decisions to be made. The Kolan Conference was composed by 4 Kolans, 1 chief Kolan and 3 vice Kolans, right? Holding relatively weighted power than the other 3 vice Kolans, the chief Kolan alone did not have the power to make the final call. Kolan was the official title of Tibet, which is equivalent to the regent minister. However, harmonious time didn't last long. Murder on the chief Kolan by the 3 vice Kolans took place not long after the enthronement of the 7th Dalai. Well, it was not long after the optimization of the autocratic ruling of Deshi institution, which was to carry out an institution of democratic centralism, a conference of 4 members. Consequently, the new institution had not been operated for long. The 3 vice Kolans schemed to murder the chief Kolan, which is unexpected. The 7th Dalai was only a teenager who was not old enough to deal with such a shocking matter. Why? Since the roles of Kolan were not possible taken by anyone but local hereditary aristocratic families. The posts were not taken by one single aristocratic family. Actually, each Kolan had an aristocratic family to support. Therefore, there was conflict of interest or even grievance against each other. Well, I personally don't understand well on this decision-making mechanism by making the Kolan Conference as its administrative center. I would share my bold guess that the chief Kolan may have the right to negate, and this possibly led to the murder by the ally of the 3 vice Kolans. Just imagine the tough situation for the 7th Dalai. Such a scary coup took place, and it was not long before his enthronement. How dreadful and thorny!